You know that visceral, just exhausting feeling you get when you open up like any social media app and you are instantly bombarded with that relentless hustle culture
Oh
advice?
yeah, it is completely inescapable right now.
Right. It is always some guy sitting in a leased sports car just shouting at you to work a 100-hour a week and sleep under your desk and grind until your eyes literally bleed.
Which is just a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. It is completely draining and, frankly, it is terrible advice. So today, we are cutting through all of that noise. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here. We've got a lot to cover.
We really do. Our mission today is to extract the actual scientifically backed mechanisms of how you can genuinely get ahead of 99% of people without burning out, without tearing your hair out, or falling into the absolute trap of just, useless busyness.
Yeah, we are unpacking some brilliant insights today from productivity experts like Lenny Richardson and Ali Abdaal, and we are pulling really heavily from concepts in atomic habits and the unfair advantage.
And the goal here isn't just to hand you some disjointed list of life hacks to memorize, right?
No, not at all. I mean, anyone can tell you to drink water and put your phone away.
Right.
What we actually want to do is synthesize these diverse perspectives into a unified roadmap for your life.
Because we really need to look at the psychology and the neurology behind these strategies.
Exactly. Like, why do they actually work on the human brain? Because when you understand the why and the how, you don't need to rely on sheer willpower anymore.
You can just design a life that pulls you towards success automatically.
That is the dream,
It
right?
is. Okay, so let's unpack this. Because logically, before we can talk about the mechanics of how to be productive, we have to figure out what exactly we're being productive for.
Right, because if you don't know where you are going, it really doesn't matter how fast you get there.
Yeah, a why is kind of like a compass in a forest. Without it, you can run as fast as you want, but you will just end up walking in circles.
That is a great analogy. And that brings us to a really fascinating sociological concept from the sources. The reality that we currently live in what they call a low-status society.
Okay, a low status society. What does that mean exactly?
So the underlying argument here is that modern society actively pushes fake role models onto us, and it completely hijacks our evolutionary drive for status.
Wait, our evolutionary drive?
Yeah, we are literally wired to look up to the most capable people in our tribe, right? The ones who provide value.
Okay, that makes sense.
But today, the algorithm just feeds us internet pranksters whose only skill is agitating people for views, or, heavily Botoxed celebrities who are famous purely for being famous.
Like the Kardashians, basically.
Exactly. We are seeing this massive shift where modern businesses and influencers were built around extracting value from you.
Like intentionally designing apps to steal your attention.
Yes, or selling you a marginally different smartphone every single year. They are extracting value rather than actually creating value or solving real problems.
So the trap here is that if you absorb your environment without questioning it, you start chasing those same shallow metrics.
You do. You chase fame or hypervisibility or just quick cash.
And then you inadvertently adopt that low status value extracting mindset yourself.
Precisely. And you end up climbing this ladder only to realize years later that it is leaning against the completely wrong wall.
Ugh, that is a terrifying thought. So how do we fix this?
Well, you have to completely reset your internal compass. And there's a brilliant mental exercise for this called the funeral test.
The funeral test sounds a bit dark.
It sounds dark, but it is incredibly clarifying. I want you to imagine walking up to a casket at a funeral. You look inside, and it is you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, now look around the room at the people who showed up. What do you actually want them to be saying about you?
Not just what sounds good on a resume.
Exactly. Not the corporate jargon. What is the actual legacy you left behind in their lives?
That is heavy.
It is. But once you have that vivid, honest picture, you use that as your North Star. You basically reverse engineer your entire life, your daily habits, and your career choices from that exact vision.
Man, that cuts right through the ego. But let me challenge this a bit.
Sure, go for it.
Having a North Star is beautiful in theory, but what if you were looking at that vision and you realize you are starting miles behind everyone else?
Right, the reality check.
Yeah, like you have this grand vision, but right now you are completely broke.
Right.
Or you don't have a college degree.
Or you live in a tiny town with zero networking opportunities.
Exactly. How on earth do you compete if you are explicitly not starting on a level playing field?
And that is the exact friction point that trips most people up. It is where the framework from the unfair advantage becomes so incredibly crucial.
Okay, let's get into that.
We basically have to completely shatter the myth that success is purely about hard work and a meritocracy.
Because it's not.
It is absolutely not. Success is a combination of fair play, which is the hard work anyone can do, plus your unfair advantages.
Unfair advantages, which the authors break down into the Miles framework, right?
Yes, MILES. It stands for money, intelligence, location, education, and status.
But wait, when you list those out, it sounds like unfair advantages are just things for billionaires and, like, child prodigies.
It really sounds like it, I know. But the brilliance of the framework is that we all actually have them. We just have to accurately audit our lives to find them.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure, look at Evan Spiegel, the co-founder of Snapchat. He grew up in a multi-million-dollar house with powerful lawyer parents,
So his unfair advantages were clearly money and status.
obviously. Or take the Collison brothers who founded Stripe. They were programming geniuses as teenagers.
Massive intelligence advantage.
Right. But here's the psychological twist. Even a lack of something is an unfair advantage if you know how to leverage it.
Wait, really? How does lacking money give you an advantage?
It forces a psychological state called functional resourcefulness.
Functional resourcefulness.
Yeah, if you have absolutely no money, you cannot buy your way out of a problem. That constraint literally forces your brain to be endlessly creative.
Ah, whereas a well-funded startup might just lazily throw like $100,000 at Google Ads.
Exactly. They throw money at it, learn absolutely nothing about their actual customer, and then they fail.
But the broke entrepreneur has to talk to people face to face.
They have to iterate their product constantly and build a genuine community. Their lack of money forces a level of grit and insight that wealth actually prevents.
That makes total sense. It is really about playing the hand you are dealt, but playing it strategically rather than just complaining about the cards.
Yes, it requires adopting what they call a reality growth mindset.
Which means
It means you have to keep your feet firmly rooted in the harsh, objective reality of your actual circumstances. No toxic positivity.
no pretending things are easier than they are.
Right. But simultaneously, you keep your head in the clouds with this absolute self-belief that you can navigate those circumstances.
Okay, so we've got our starting advantages locked in. We have audited our miles, and we know our ultimate vision from the funeral test.
So we know where we are and where we are going.
Right. So how do we actually bridge that massive gap between the two? Because counterintuitively, a lot of the productivity experts we are looking at today strongly argue that we need to completely stop fixating on the goals themselves.
This is one of the most powerful mindset shifts you can possibly make.
Ali Abdaal highlights this brilliant point from James Clear, doesn't he?
He does. He points out that winners and losers have the exact same goals.
Which is wild to think about.
But it's true. Every single athlete standing on the track at the Olympics wants the gold medal.
Yeah.
Every candidate interviewing for the job wants the job.
Therefore, the goal cannot be the mechanism that actually differentiates the winner from the loser.
Exactly. And furthermore, from a psychological standpoint, goals actually restrict your happiness.
Because you are constantly telling yourself, I'll finally be happy once I achieve X.
It is the classic arrival fallacy. You are just constantly pushing your happiness over the horizon.
So what do we do instead?
Instead of obsessing over goals, you must focus entirely on identity and systems.
Identity and systems.
Yeah. Instead of setting a vague goal like, I want to lose weight, you literally adopt a new identity. You tell yourself, I am a healthy person, and therefore, I naturally eat wholesome foods and move my body.
Oh, this taps directly into ancient Aristotelian philosophy.
It does.
Yeah.
Aristotle believed in habituation, the idea that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence isn't an act, it's a habit.
So if you act as if you are someone, your brain eventually rewires itself to believe it to be true.
Exactly. Humans experience massive cognitive dissonance when our actions don't align with our internal beliefs, so we naturally course correct to match our identity.
Now, here is where it gets really interesting to me, because one of the examples brought up in this context is Kanye West.
Oh yeah, a fascinating case study.
Right. Say what you want about his controversies, but early in his career, he utilized this absolute, almost delusional level of self-belief.
He genuinely adopted the identity of a musical genius and a fashion icon long before the industry ever validated him.
He acted in accordance with that identity until reality essentially bent to accommodate him.
He did.
But let me ask you this. How do you, just as a regular person, keep believing in this shiny new identity when you are putting in the daily work, you are grinding away, but you are seeing absolutely zero physical or financial results?
That is the ultimate test. And it is what productivity experts call the plateau of latent potential.
Also known as the Valley of Disappointment.
Yes, we all have this inherent bias where we expect progress to be a straight 45-degree angle line.
Like, effort should equal an immediate visible result.
Exactly. But compounding systems just do not work like that. The results are delayed.
You've got to use the ice cube analogy here.
I love that analogy. Think of an ice cube sitting in a room that is 25 degrees. You put in the work to heat the room to 26, 27, 28 degrees.
And nothing happens.
Right, the ice just sits there. It feels like you are completely failing. But then you hit 32 degrees and it melts.
The work wasn't wasted, it was just being stored.
Exactly.
So how do you actually survive that valley without just throwing your hands up and quitting?
You have to completely dismantle those vague, overwhelming goals and reduce your cognitive load.
So get in shape is a bad goal.
It is a terrible goal because it is too abstract for the brain to process daily. You must break it down into tiny, hyper-specific microtasks.
And there are incredible tools for this now, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
For instance, using AI apps like Goblin tools. You can type in a massive, anxiety-inducing project, and the AI breaks it down into absurdly small daily microtasks.
So you don't have to think about starting a business today.
No, you just have to execute the task, register a domain name. It completely removes the emotional weight.
You are basically bypassing the brain's overwhelm response. But building these systems still requires actually doing the work. And it seems like a lot of us completely misunderstand what hard work actually looks like.
We really do. We are completely trapped in this industrial era productivity illusion.
We have to completely redefine true productivity.
Yes, true productivity is simply the value produced divided by the time and energy inputted.
But the standard employee mindset, which is carried over from factory work, falsely equates hours with output.
It's the belief that if I sit at my desk, staring at a screen for 12 hours, I am inherently successful and productive.
But the leverage mindset, the business owner mindset, looks at the exact same problem differently.
They ask, who is actually more productive? The person who achieves the multi-million-dollar goal in 7 years of grinding, or the person who figures out a system to do it in 7 days?
Productivity is so much like building muscle.
Oh, how so?
Well, if you go to the gym and you lift heavy weights for 15 hours a day, you don't instantly turn into an Olympian.
No, you definitely don't.
You just tear a muscle, destroy your central nervous system, and end up in the hospital. Burnout is literally just a mental injury caused by overtraining your brain.
That is a phenomenal analogy. More hours does not equal more strength.
Right. So how do we be efficient without tearing that mental muscle?
To do that, you have to understand the neuroscience of motivation, specifically the J-curve.
The J-curve. Okay, explain that.
So the biggest mistake people make is lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, just waiting for a magical wave of motivation to wash over them before they start working.
Oh, I am so guilty of that.
We all are. But neurologically, motivation does not precede action. Action precedes motivation.
Wait, really?
Yes. Dopamine is actually released as you approach a goal, not before you start.
So you essentially just have to trick yourself into starting.
Exactly. You force yourself to work for just 5 to 10 minutes. According to the J-curve, your motivation will actually dip initially.
Oh, yeah. The first few minutes of writing an essay or coding feel awful and clunky. The brain hates it.
It resists the effort completely. But right around the 8-minute mark, your focus catches, dopamine kicks in, and your motivation skyrockets.
So the sequel hack here is linking that initial hard work to immediate satisfaction.
Right, because our primitive monkey brains are wired for instant gratification. So you just hijack that system.
How do you do that practically?
You set a strict rule. Like, you only allow yourself to play your favorite video game immediately after finishing your deep work block.
Oh, I see. Ali Abdal used this masterfully in medical school, right?
He did. He would only let himself listen to his favorite fantasy audiobooks while he was physically at the gym. And then he'd reward himself with a trip to the sauna right after.
Wow, so you are essentially training yourself like Pavlov's dog.
Pretty much.
You are wiring the brain to associate the friction of the gym with the pleasure of the audiobook and the sauna.
Exactly.
Okay, so you have the identity, you are pushing through the J-curve, you are working efficiently without burning out. But what happens when you inevitably hit a pothole?
Right, the obstacles.
Yeah, or worse, what if you realize your ladder is leaning against the wrong wall and you are driving 100 miles an hour in the totally wrong direction?
This is where we really need to talk about environmental design, specifically managing friction and distraction.
Okay, let's talk about friction.
If willpower is a finite battery, friction is the gravitational pull of your environment. You want to ruthlessly reduce friction for your good habits.
Making them aerodynamic.
Yes. And you want to massively increase the gravity on your bad habits. It is called choice architecture.
Give me an example of the good habits first.
Okay, if you keep forgetting to take a new daily supplement, you don't try to remember harder.
Right, willpower fails.
Willpower always fails. Instead, you simply move the bottle to sit directly on top of your coffee maker or right next to your toothbrush. You make it harder not to do it.
Zero friction. I love that. But for the bad habits, you basically have to build walls.
Exactly. If your phone is your weakness, you don't just put it on silent on your desk.
Why not? Isn't that enough?
No, because the mere presence of the phone actually drains your cognitive battery. A part of your brain is actively suppressing the urge to check it.
Wow.
So you need to put the screen on grayscale to kill those slot machine dopamine colors, then turn on airplane mode and
Yeah.
physically lock it in another room.
Which prevents something neurologically terrifying called attention residue.
Yes, attention residue.
Yeah.
If you are deep in focused work and you take a quote-unquote quick 5-minute phone call, the distraction doesn't just cost you 5 minutes.
It cost you 25 minutes.
Exactly. Part of your brain's processing power remains stuck on that conversation long after you hang up, trying to close the loop.
It is like having too many browser tabs open in your brain. It just drains your RAM.
That's exactly what it feels like.
I completely agree with locking the phone away to protect that focus, but let me challenge you on the direction part.
Okay, what's the challenge?
Let's say I am hyper-focused. My phone is locked in a safe. I am putting in the daily reps. But what if my grand strategy is just a complete dud? Yeah, what if I am perfectly, flawlessly executing a terrible plan?
That is the absolute ultimate fear of the high performer. And it brings us to the 3 scientifically backed secrets to long-term success.
Which are?
Grit, consistency, and crucially, iteration.
Okay, break those down.
Grit is your psychological resilience. It's your ability to fail without losing your enthusiasm. Think of Kobe Bryant.
The basketball camp story.
Yes. When he was a young teenager at a basketball camp in Italy, he got completely crushed.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, everyone was faster, stronger, and shot better. He actually scored 0 points in a tournament.
0 points. That's rough.
But instead of quitting, his grit allowed him to accept the reality of his current skill level.
He knew he couldn't beat them today, but if he played the long game, he would eventually outwork them.
Exactly. That is grit combined with consistency, putting in the daily reps.
But iteration is the safety net, right?
Precisely. Iteration is how you avoid blindly executing a bad plan for 10 years. It is applying the scientific method to your life.
So making continuous small tweaks based on objective reality.
Exactly. Pablo Picasso didn't just paint one single canvas, shrug, and give up when people didn't instantly laud it as a masterpiece.
He continuously tweaked his style.
Right, moving through his blue period, his rose period, into cubism. If you are a freelance video editor and you are sending out cold emails to get clients and no one is replying.
You don't just grit your teeth and send 10,000 more identical emails.
No.
Ooh.
You iterate, you tweak the subject line, you edit a custom sample, you change your target demographic.
You must conduct weekly reviews to gather objective feedback on what went well and what failed, and then adapt.
And sometimes, iteration is literally as simple as changing your physical environment.
Oh, like working from a cafe.
Yeah. If you are feeling bored and uninspired at your home desk, physically driving to a toffee shop or a library can provide enough novelty to reset your brain's dopamine pathways and cure that boredom.
I love how actionable that is. Let's actually pull all these high-level philosophies, these Aristotelian concepts and dopamine mechanics, completely down to earth.
Let's do it.
How can you, the listener, apply this today to practically get ahead of the vast majority of society? Because honestly, looking at the sociological data right now, society is struggling.
It really is.
Roughly 60% of people are overweight, a massive portion of the population is buried in consumer debt, and we are living through a profound epidemic of loneliness.
So the bar is actually set incredibly low.
Exactly. As the old saying goes, if a bear is chasing you and a friend, you don't have to be the fastest runner in the world, you just have to be slightly faster than your friend.
It's true.
Yeah.
And while we obviously want everyone to succeed, the reality is that separating yourself from the pack doesn't require superhuman effort.
It requires a practical top 1% blueprint.
Built on 3 core pillars that you can start working on right now. The first pillar is gaining physical energy.
Getting aesthetic and in shape.
Right. And you don't need a fancy gym membership. Start with basic calisthenics. Just push-ups and squats in your living room to build the habit.
And if you are managing weight,
Utilize micro cuts and micro bulks.
instead of those extreme crash diets.
Exactly. Extreme diets destroy your metabolism. Just shift your caloric intake slightly by 200 or 300 calories so the habit actually sticks.
And this isn't just about vanity, is it?
Not at all. It is about leveraging the psychological halo effect.
Ah, the halo effect.
Yeah, human beings possess a deeply ingrained cognitive bias where we subconsciously treat people who are fit, well-groomed, and dress well as if they are inherently smarter, more reliable, and more trustworthy.
That is wild. Simply taking your clothes to a tailor so they fit properly acts almost like the NZT pill from the movie Limitless.
It really does. It instantly, effortlessly changes how the world interacts with you, and it just opens doors.
That is undeniably true.
Yeah.
So once you have that physical energy and presence, how do you tackle the next pillar?
The second pillar is mental leverage. You need to increase your income.
Okay, how do we do that?
Well, you have to forget the traditional path if it is not yielding results. You need to get what they call a master's degree in life.
By taking calculated risk, building side projects, failing, and learning from actual messy experience.
Yes. But if you are already employed, there is a brilliantly simple, data-driven tactic to increase your earning power.
Ooh, what is it?
You sit down and write a formal letter to your boss. In that letter, precisely map out the actual current market value of all the varied skills you bring to the company.
So you research what a competitor would pay for your exact output.
Yes, and you use that objective data to ask for a raise. It works because it leverages the anchoring bias and removes the emotional subjective element from the negotiation.
You are not begging for a favor. You are proving mathematically why you are an undervalued asset.
Exactly.
Brilliant. And what is the final piece of the blueprint?
The third pillar is social leverage. Build relationships.
This goes back to that epidemic of loneliness.
Yes, we have this epidemic because everyone is passively sitting at home, just scrolling through social media, waiting to be invited to things.
You have to bypass that passive bystander effect and become the proactive organizer.
Exactly. One incredibly effective strategy is building an actual Excel spreadsheet or a database of your acquaintances.
Which sounds super clinical at first.
It sounds cold, but it is actually deeply empathetic. You note down their very specific interests, like if they love playing tennis or if they're really into a specific genre of movies.
Then you proactively invite those specific people to targeted events they will actually enjoy.
You literally treat friendship like a proactive project.
I love that. And there is a golden rule here, right?
Yes, when people inevitably leave you on read or don't reply immediately, do not take it personally.
Because everyone is overwhelmed by their own attention residue.
Exactly. Just follow up gently later.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom all the way out, getting ahead of 99% of people isn't about bleeding over your keyboard or working a 100-hour week.
No, it's not.
It starts by defining your true why using that visceral funeral test. It means looking objectively at your circumstances and leveraging your specific miles' unfair advantages.
Even your constraints.
Right. You have to ditch vague, anxiety-inducing goals and instead build identity-based systems. You redefine hard work, not as hours put in, but as value put out.
You hack your dopamine to conquer the J-curve.
Exactly. You ruthlessly curate your environment to eliminate friction, you iterate constantly to avoid driving off a cliff, and you systematically build up your physical health, your financial leverage, and your proactive relationships.
That is the complete psychological roadmap.
It really is.
And my challenge to you, the listener, is to step out of the passive consumption mode today. Look at your grand vision and use a tool or just a pen and paper to define one microscopic, perfectly achievable microtask you can complete before you go to sleep tonight.
Because time magnifies the margin between success and failure.
Exactly. Good habits make time your greatest ally, and bad habits make time your worst enemy. Start letting time work for you today.
That is a perfect place to wrap up, but I do want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to chew on.
Oh, let's hear it.
Throughout this deep dive, we talked heavily about ruthlessly curating your environment, locking your phone in a safe, turning it to grayscale, and completely ignoring phone calls to protect your deep focus and avoid attention residue.
We did.
But we also talked about the absolute necessity of expanding your Lux surface area and proactively building an Excel spreadsheet of connections to supercharge your unfair advantages.
Right.
So how do you actually balance the deep, almost hermit-like isolation required to do brilliant work with the hyper-visibility and networking required to actually get lucky?
Wow. That is a paradox.
It is a fascinating tightrope walk between being a total hermit and a socialite, and it is something for you to explore as you map out your own path. We started this deep dive talking about the exhausting noise of hustle culture. Hopefully now you have the quiet, calculated systems to simply walk right past the noise.